are the exact same formula and recipe I talked about last year with Connor and Samuels. Connor and Samuels last year is this year's Jaylen Samuels and Benny Snell. Top 5 running backs.
You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Talking about players that are already in your league or maybe on your team, your dynasty league team, and then their environment changes. How can you evaluate that?
That is a case-by-case type basis. So let's use the Todd Gurley example. Now, is there a chance Todd Gurley somehow manages to be very productive and play 14 games, drag his knee along? There is that potential. And just to hit on this before I circle back to answer your question, I get often asked, hey, Smitty, what if you're wrong on all your Todd Gurley bus talk? You know, some people are going to lose their league if you're wrong. That's not true, because where you're passing on him, where his ADP currently is, there are just as good, if not much safer players. So you're still going to be okay. You may not be able to ride the Todd Gurley train on the very last hurrah if he ends up having one more year left, which I don't think he'll have. But you're not going to be putting yourself at risk by taking a Mike Evans or a Dalvin Cook. He's another player you could avoid if you just don't like the injury risk. But insert player that you like there for that. But as far as situation, so with Todd Gurley's situation, the way I look at that, or actually let's use James Conner, and he was my number 2 bold prediction for 2018. James Conner to break out and help people win leagues. So you're talking to probably, and I've always challenged people, finding somebody that's written something bolder on James Conner than I have, because I don't think there's anybody there. So I'm not a James Conner hater, to just put that to rest right away. But his situation is so full of red flags. I don't get why, and he's falling now, but why people were even considering drafting him in the top 7 to 12. And I got ripped apart constantly in comments on Reddit, forum posts, everywhere, when I said that if you dropped James Conner in 2019 as a first-round pick, you were setting yourself up for extreme disappointment. And the reason is his situation. Look at his situation. Eddie Faulkner, the running backs coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, the new running backs coach, was Jaylen Samuels' college coach at NC State. And Jaylen Samuels was used extensively in the passing game, so much so that he was a tight end eligible rookie last year in Yahoo League. So if you played in Yahoo, Jaylen Samuels could have been a tight end for you or a running back. So to have just that one component mixed into the evaluation process makes you say, okay, there's a red flag now for James Conner. Now, that by itself shouldn't have you dropping Conner out of your top 10 or whatever, if that was the only thing. But then you have Conner broke down last year. He broke down before he got hurt, because I have my Ask Smitty feature at sleeperu.com. I got email after email for several weeks straight saying, Smitty, should I cut bait on Conner? He's hit a wall. Then he got hurt. And then now you have Benny Snell entering the picture. So the way I let situation change again is a mix of my gut instinct that Conner broke down, so that worries me. But now he has the running backs coach that Jaylen Samuels had in college, now his coach. I mean, they're going to want to use Samuels on the field regardless. So I told everybody that you're going to see news break that they may lean more committee-like heading into 2019, which, again, got ripped apart for because the Steelers don't do that, right? Well, they've always had Bell. Even when Bell's been suspended or hurt, they've had Bell there for quite some time. This is the first time they don't have the threat of a Bell coming back or the positive thing of a Bell coming back. They have Conner, who's unproven as a workhorse, now supposed to fill a role of a Pittsburgh Steelers running back, which gets more carries and gets overworked more than anybody in the entire league. He's supposed to carry the workload again for an entire 2019? I don't think so. So for me, situation means so much, but you need to have multiple things in order to, I think, really feel confident that you're making the right call when you predict a bust or a breakout, because in those cases, you are putting a little more on the line when you're predicting a bust or predicting a breakout, because you're either reaching a tiny bit to make sure you get that breakout, or you're passing on a guy like James Conner because of fear that he's going to bust. So situation means a ton, but there's no real 100% way to attack it the same way every time when you're looking at a situation. You have to look at Gurley, the seat from that Rams coaching staff. The fact that they traded up to get Henderson, the fact that Henderson is so talented, he's bleeding talent. The fact that Todd Gurley, when you look at the actual numbers, wasn't getting the breakaway runs he used to or the big plays he used to. He was very productive, but what would a Darrell Henderson done if he was in there when he's the most explosive running back in college football history? When you look at yards per attempt, number one. And he's across the board. Let me pull up some numbers here on Darrell Henderson, but number one in the nation in 20-plus yard runs, number one in the nation in 20 and 40-yard-plus runs, number one in yards per carry after contact. And he had, believe it or not, he had a 4.3740 according to many scouts. There was his 40 time, I believe the machinery that was used during his 40 was reportedly having some issues when he ran his 40. So there's word by many scouts, not just one, that he ran a 4.37. So you can lump that into situation when it comes to Todd Gurley, in my opinion, because I think Darrell Henderson is a situation that's in the way.
Well, hey, just we have that interboard league that some of the Sleeper U guys played in last year. We won that championship. Oh, I will tell you that all 6 of us had James Conner on our team. All 6 of us. We got him late, we got him cheap, and he was a difference maker.
Yep, we won that championship, and that's against how many communities?
There's 96 total teams.
Okay.
I think one of the guys who actually was the highest scorer, Guinness. He was the highest scorer for the entire league. For the entire
thing. And we got first overall, right?
He got first overall. Yep. The ability to get those guys that are going to break out really cheap when you're drafting like that makes a difference. So that evaluation really, I think your point is that if you can get better at understanding how to pick up that value, whether you're trading or you're drafting or whatever, it makes a difference in your team composition.
Let me give you one more example too. So a guy I liked a lot heading into the NFL draft, Damian Harris. He ran at Alabama with Josh Jacobs, who everyone thinks is the 1 or 2, rookie running back ranked. And he could be. But Harris, by a lot of scouts, very respectable scouts, had Harris ranked number 1 out of all the rookie running backs in like January and the early part of February. And I do a lot of rookie analysis and stuff and breakdowns for sleeperu.com. So I know this. He was very, very highly ranked. Then the Jacobs hype started to emerge. And when one of those running backs in one of those dual situations rises, the other one naturally falls because people don't want to bank on both. So Jacobs became everybody's favorite running back to rank. But Harris was very, very good. Everybody expected him to be good back in January and then the months prior. He had more of a productive season there in terms of yardage. Jacobs has had a 650-yard college rushing season to his name. That's the most rushing yards he's ever rushed in college in 1 year, 650. Harris has surpassed that by a lot. He wasn't used a ton. Neither of them were used a ton last year the way that they should have been because they were blowing teams out, and the fact that they had both of them to use. So that's a perfect example of where I like talent and I see, okay, this guy's good, but you can't just let it die there. You have to look at what happens. Then you look at A.J. Brown, probably one of the most polished rookie wide receivers to enter this draft class. I had N'Keal Harry number 1. I've been predicting N'Keal Harry to be a top 1 to 4 fantasy wide receiver in about 2 years, so entering his 3rd year. But A.J. Brown I loved a lot. He landed in a very bad situation in Tennessee. So it stunted my predicting, or at least it stunted his growth enough to where let's come reassess this later, let him fall, and hopefully, you grab him at a good deal and something changes like it. Arizona, that went from Rosen to Kyler Murray in 1 season. Something could happen for him. But situation was so bad for him, in my opinion, that he's fallen below other wide receivers that I did not have ranked ahead of him in terms of talent. But look at Damian Harris. Where's Damian Harris land? In New England. behind a running back, Sony Michel, who was passed on by team after team after team because they're afraid of bone-on-bone, Todd Gurley's situation, arthritis in his knee. And he just had a procedure this offseason. So Sony Michel is not standing in Damian Harris's way, I think, come mid-season. And so that's one of those things where you're putting the pieces together. Okay, I have a person that I believe is going to be really good in Harris. What's the situation look like? And I think he's quietly embedded because he's embedded. He's not in the starting lineup yet. And James White will be on the side catching passes all year. But up the middle, they're going to need a first and second down running back and a very productive offense. And I think it's going to be Damian Harris, and you can get him so cheap. So that's kind of how my mind works. Okay, how do I grab one of these sleeper running backs? And look at Jaylen Samuels this year. He and Snell together are the exact same formula and recipe I talked about last year with Connor and Samuels. Connor and Samuels last year is this year's Jaylen Samuels and Benny Snell. You need both of them. So for me, Jaylen Samuels screams breakout at the cost. I mean, if he never breaks out, he doesn't cost you your league. You're spending a very low-risk pick on him. Same with Benny Snell. But again, you can't do this in a league where you're in a Yahoo league and you have 4 or 5 running back spots. You can only do this in a bigger league. But together, this is how my mind works and how I come up with some of the bigger bold predictions that are like a diamond in the rough type situations where you're grabbing a guy that is costing you very little on the scale of risk versus reward, but his reward is through the roof. You don't lose any leagues. You only win leagues when those things land. So that's how my mind works in terms of these situations and looking at how situation can determine whether that talent can be unleashed right away. Maybe it won't ever be unleashed. Maybe it is hidden, like in Damian Harris's case. Top 5 running back.
You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.